Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're all having a great one. So, just reporting in here from the actual Alchemist Cabinet. A little cellar here where I do a lot of my work. Been doing some clay work today, as you can see over there. We'll be talking a little bit more about that in the future. That is more in the nature of actual alchemical medicine than spirits for drinking purposes. Of course, to me, all those things are one and the same. Anyways, hope everybody's staying busy. Hope you're having a good holiday season. Here to answer your questions as always. If you have questions, send them to me, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. Or through the comments below, or any of my social media. And if I have an answer, I'll get back to you. And if I see the question, I'll get back to you. You know, this time of the year it gets pretty busy, and I find ways to keep myself busy a lot of times too. Hence the clay work over here. Distiller's Almanac. So Kim, my wife, is currently formatting all that stuff. She's almost done with that. All the guest articles are in. I just went through and got all the illustrations and pictures together and all that stuff. That thing should be out here in the very near future. When you order it this year, you'll get access to a digital copy and you'll get a physical copy. As I said before, I refuse to make this a purely digital endeavor. In the world that we're going into, the dangerous times that we live in, I like having physical copies of things. There's something cool about having an actual book that you can hold on to, look at, smell, you know, the whole experience of those material sort of things, whether it be books or records or anything of that nature, versus the ethereal nature of this digital world that we now live in, which has its place as well. But anyways, let's get into your questions. Oh, real quick too, for anybody who ordered books, that have been waiting on books, we did finally start getting those Amazon shipments in. I don't know what the hell took Amazon so long this time, but books will be going out here shortly. So question from the channel, first and foremost. I do have a question though. I purchased some Kveik samples. They're too small to get a batch of mash going. Would you recommend malt extract to bump up this yeast population? Looking to try Rima or Outer Hebrides Kveik yeast in the next go. Have you ever tried them? And do you have any advice on them? Thanks for all your help, and you have really helped me up my skills at my mad scientist distilling. Well, yeah, man, that's what it's all about, right? This is this is a channel for distillers who wish they were wizards, or wizards who are becoming distillers, one way or the other. But so I have not played with those two particular Kveik yeast strains. I purchased a bunch of Kveik years ago, and also traded for a bunch of actual farmstead Kveiks from folks in the right places that had those. What I would suggest is to bump up that population, and also to bump up the alcohol tolerance of any Kveik strain or any yeast strain out there. Use what you're going to use in your mash, right? So if you're going to do single malt whiskey, yeah, use malt extract to get that population up. If you're going to do bourbon, use a bourbon mash bill to get that extract up, or at least use rye and barley malts, or wheat and barley malt, or something of that nature to get that population up. If you're going to do sugar shines, use what you're going to use in your sugar shines. If you're going to use brandies, use what you're going to use in your brandies. Get the Kveik used to those things, and used to being able to finish out the specific gravity that you want to, because a lot of times those Kveiks are not attenuated to those higher gravities, even 7, 8, 9, 10%. So you need to work on that over a couple generations while you up the population and adapt it to what you're actually going to be using it for. Now, that doesn't mean you can never use it for any other product that you want to. You just need to take it through another generation. So if you're going from, say, a bourbon, take that yeast and that matrix that you have it growing in, and move that over to fruit juice for brandy, and take it through a generation or two. Let it get used to its new environment, its new pH, the new alcohol, sugar, osmosis, all that stuff. Let it adapt that way, so that you don't struggle, so that you don't have secondary infections and those sort of things. In fact, I hadn't even I don't know if I knew about Rima or the Hebrides Kveik yeast. I'm gonna have to look into those for curiosity's sake. I've got a great I don't even know what the word would be. Word for it would be population of Kveik. In seed breeding terms, what you call land race. So it's probably, started off with multiple varieties. I'm sure I've lost a few over time in that population, and there's dominant varieties that are moving through there now. So I don't even know how many are left in there. All I know is it makes damn good whiskey, damn good shine, and damn good brandy, and it will be being used at Old Homestead in the near future. So let's see if we can find another Another question here. I know I've got something. I just got to flip through my papers because, as always, I am unprepared, and I also apparently cannot hold the camera stable because I'm not a cameraman. All right. Oh, so the first part of that, by the way, because I missed it until just now. So I want to give you an update on the chestnut rye whiskey experiment. So far, it's not going great. Have had difficulty getting the malts I wanted, so I had to substitute some. I added my own rye malt and some Wiseman's rye malt. I could not get the faucet. The conversion went well, and Gravity said I should get 4 to 5% alcohol, which was my goal since wanting to figure out flavors of this. The Stalgian, however, did not like this mash and stalled out, partly to a cold snap, which I fixed with the heater. I believe it did finally go to 1.01 on specific gravity. I don't have my notebook in front of me and must admit to relying on Google to explain my specific gravity readings. Currently planning to run it today. It has developed a pretty good lacto infection, which I did want, but maybe not to this amount. We'll let you know how it turns out. So hey, that might even be an example, you know, that Kveik strain not being adapted to the fermentation matrix that it's in, right? Sometimes you got to take them through a generation or two just to get them used to it before you actually put them into practical use. Let's see, we got one from Terry here. So sometimes I drink and get to thinking about distillation. Right? If you knew how many of these videos came from me drinking, you probably wouldn't be surprised. I really need to ask this question. I heard you talk about the double thumper system you have at Old Homestead and how it really helps to increase the oiliness and flavor, but I've always been told that thumpers remove some of that. I love running my thumper for a single pass, but I also really love flavor. I've done a lot of double pot distilled spirits and single pass through my thumper. I guess my question is, how do I increase flavor on a whiskey run or other by utilizing a double thumper setup? I think I might have actually answered this already in a recent video, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So I'm going to answer it again. So the oiliness factor for me on the double thumper system at Old Homestead, I can control that very tightly. So what I've discovered with my particular system is if I want a clean spirit, I will put my tails directly into the 250-gallon pot, and then I will just put mash into the double thumper system, right? Well, that mash is sitting in there and it's just getting inundated the whole day through with steam, hammering it, right? Extracting all that flavor out of it that I possibly can. Of course, I've got, you know, large openings on those that I can drop in whatever other ingredients I want to into the thumpers to be able to extract those, various botanicals or fruits, etc., all that sort of stuff too. But if I want something real oily, if, for example, let's say, you know, a lot of professional distillers right now are really on this 3-chamber thing, and I played around with one, you know, in my yard for a couple of years, and I can see why they like them. I can get something real similar by just loading those two thumpers with mash and tails instead of putting the tails into the pot. That seems to really increase the oiliness, the flavor components, all that sort of stuff substantially. But I'm not stripping flavor out. I'm getting a ton of flavor out because I'm constantly putting mash into those two thumpers, those two retorts. That mash is where the flavor's at. I'm extracting that flavor, and because that second retort is literally like, you know, the equivalent of a single pass one time through distillation, there's always a little fraction of alcohol that comes across. It's actually technically only ever been through the still one time. Now what it does is it does compress my heads and my tails and my hearts a little bit to where the proof goes a little bit higher, but it's still within pot still range. It's usually on average on my hearts 135 to 140 proof, so same as double pot still. But I get a nice tight heads cut and I get a nice tight tails cut. Although I do cut the tails a lot higher than I typically would on double pot still run. Typically on the double thumper system, we're cutting the tails by 120 proof as opposed to down in the 90s or somewhere in there. You know, 92, 95 if we're doing a white spirit, or below that 88 to 92 if we're doing a brown spirit. So I'm not having any problem losing any flavor to those thumpers. I think people have this confusion, and we talked about flavor and the range of flavor, right? They have this confusion, they have this thought that the more distillations there are, the more devices there are, the less flavor they get. That can be true in some instances, typically with fractional distillation like on a column, that can be true, but it's not always true. And you always have to remember too, what exactly is flavor? So flavor can be a lot of things. Flavor can be positive or it can be negative, right? I mean, there's flavors that you probably like that I might not like. There's flavors that I probably like that you might not like. There's flavors that we all as humans could agree are disagreeable. Do you want those in distillation, right? It becomes a matter of what tool in the toolbox do you want to use. How refined does your skill become? How refined does fermentation become? Once fermentation is done, you've got your optimum fermentation, how you want it and what you want to do, then what do you do to treat that you know, as far as the distillation goes and the post-distillation processing and all of that sort of stuff. So all those things are very, very highly dependent, I think, in my opinion. But I'm certainly getting a very flavorful, very rich distillate from Old Homestead, and I can't wait for you guys to get a chance to try it, because truthfully, I think that Old Homestead, I know because I set it up this way, Old Homestead is very much so what a home distiller would do on scale if they had money to do it with, right? This is not so much me coming at this distillery, this being my third one. I didn't come at this as a professional industry distiller. I came at this as, what are all the cool things I learned at home that home distillers are into, and cool little tricks, home distilling being more advanced in many ways than commercial distilling. What are all those things that we can put into practice, right? And that's what makes, for example, Tyler Richardson, my still hand, you know, so good at what he's doing there, is because he was a home distiller. He understands the aesthetic of these things, and he understands exactly what I'm driving at, because it's the same sort of passions that he has as well. So hopefully that answered your question. Let's see if I got another one here real quick. I don't drop the paper. Nope. Of course, I fucking said don't drop the paper and then drop it on the floor. So now you get to watch me struggle. Okay, let's see. Is there an advantage or a disadvantage of going... Get my camera back over here. Alright, so from Keith, is there an advantage or disadvantage of going with a higher or lower entry proof with a second use bourbon barrel? Love the videos and really glad to see things are going well at Old Homestead. So, it depends on product, but, you know, again, I think I might have already answered this one too. I'm going to presume I already answered this, but I'm going to answer it anyway. So it depends on the product, it depends on what you want. At a higher proof, you're stabilizing the alcohol a little bit more. If you're using a used barrel, I'm going to presume that one of the reasons that you're doing that is because you're wanting to hold on to some more of that raw aromatic character of the distillate that you've made. So in other words, you want some of those raw materials to still be present in the distillation, where you can smell them, you can taste them, you can imagine them, that sort of thing. If you go in at a lower proof, you're going to get more oxidization. Water's a better solvent than ethanol on wood, so you're extracting more from the wood into the particular product. Whereas at a higher proof, you stabilize the alcohol, you don't have as much extraction from the wood, which I presume you want anyways if you're using a used barrel, and as such you're going to hold on to more of those raw materials. Now the opposite of this is if you're going to do a finish where you want the finish to be very heavy in the mix of the alcohol that comes back out of that barrel. You might go in at a lower proof in order to get more out of that wood, particularly if it's a dry barrel. In other words, if you had a red wine barrel that doesn't have any wine left in it other than the wine that's in the wood, you might go in at a lower proof in order to extract more from that barrel and push that wine characteristic more to the forefront in the flavors of what you're actually tasting. So a couple minutes left here on this one. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about this clay thing I got going on. So mostly playing around with clay in order to create alchemical devices of various types in the tradition of true alchemy and spagyric medicine. Things that I've wanted to mess around with for years, never had time to really mess around with on the scale that I wanted to, and now that, you know, I get to carry out all my home distilling dreams on a commercial scale, don't need to be doing that stuff at home anymore. So what I am getting very interested in is spagyric medicines, tinctures, things of that nature. And, you know, I also want to see how primitive can I take distillation, like in Oaxaca, right, where they are using clay stills for mezcal production, or in Asia where they're using them sometimes for soju and sake and those sort of things. But here's a cool little book that might interest a few of you. I don't know how many of you would really be into this, but this book is book one, the first book of distillation by Della Porta. It's an old school alchemical manual translated into English, and as you can see, you have representations of two different types of stills on the front, followed by the alchemical characters that represent them, like the two brothers hugging here, and then you also have the multi-headed dragon or salamander up top. So this book explains a lot of the different styles of alchemical distillation equipment. Let me see if I can find one here. And how they're used and how they're set up. Now, a lot of these were made out of clay, or later they were made out of glass. Sometimes they were made out of copper. There's any number of different things in here that you might find of interest. Sometimes you have multiple distillation systems set up in a bain-marie with a water bath and a furnace underneath of it. These are things that I'm working to reproduce here in my alchemical lab and play around with for various types of distillations. This book may read a little odd to you if you're not familiar with alchemical manuscripts, because not everything that they were doing is necessarily related to the things that we might be interested in as distillers. You also have to bear in mind that they're also not just distilling spirits, they're distilling, you know, obviously aromatic perfumes, but they're also playing around with distilling minerals and animals and all those sorts of things. But if that interests you, here's this book. Now, here's a cool thing I've got going. Let me see if I can show you this here. It's not baked yet, so I hope it doesn't fall apart when I pick it up, although it is air dried. Oh, so this is one of two. So this is a traditional still body of a type that was called a bear. And it was called a bear because once it has the head on, it resembles a bear a little bit. Now they did this animal thing, this animal equivalency thing, for a long time in the descriptions of alchemy. So it's supposed to look like a bear standing on two legs, etc. Here is, man, I hope I don't drop. If I drop this, I'll cry. I'll cry right here on video. See if I can grab this too. So here's the head with an output on it. It does have another clay pipe that goes in here in order to work as a condenser, an air-cooled condenser. This has a lip on the inside that I developed that will catch the distillate that cools down from the cold air. See if I can find the way that actually fits on here. But there you go. There's a bear. See if I can reach over here and grab this this pipe. Again, if I drop this thing, oh boy, would that be a bad day. All right, so here's the outlet, and that sets right about like so. That'll of course be you know, placed in there with some luting as well to seal it up. But probably fire these tomorrow maybe, and then at some point we'll do videos on how they're used. So love y'all. Later.